1,000 years before the Clone Wars. The galaxy was a very different place. The Republic was ancient, even then old, beyond reckoning, but it was not yet the beacon of peace and justice we would come to believe it was. It was a time of darkness, a time when the Sith did not skulk in the shadows or hide in secret enclaves on forgotten worlds. No, in this era, the Sith were bold. They were an empire that rivaled the Jedi in numbers and stretched across vast, smothered swaths of the galaxy. Among them rose a human male who would alter everything. His name was Darth Bane. Born on Moraband, the ancient homeworld of the Sith, Bane was not merely another Dark Lord among many. He was destined to become perhaps the most influential Sith who ever lived, though not for the reasons one might expect. Picture Moraband, a world of blood-red sands and skies, the color of raw flame. Its surface cracked and scorched, steeped in energies drawn from the deepest wells of the dark side. Ancient temples pierced, the horizon tombs of long-dead Sith whispering secrets to the wind, secrets only those attuned to pain and hunger could hear. This was the world that shaped Bane's earliest understandings of power, of the Force, and of the darkness that stirred beneath all things in this era. The Republic was locked in an endless war with the Sith, not a cold ideological divide, like the Galactic Civil War, nor a political struggle like the Clone Wars, but a fundamental clash between light and dark. The Jedi and the Sith marched entire legions into battle. Star systems burned beneath their hands. Entire worlds fell silent. Bane served in what was known as the Brotherhood of Darkness, the Sith Empire of his day. On the surface, it appeared that the Sith had never been stronger. Their armies were vast, their dark side wielders countless, but Bane saw deeper. He saw what others refused to see, how the Sith consumed themselves from within, how they schemed not against the Jedi, but against each other. Their hunger for personal power left their strength fragmented. Every victory over the Jedi came with a hidden cost, resources lost not to their enemy, but to the ambitions of their own allies. They withheld intelligence. They sabotaged operations. They assassinated rivals, not to advance the cause, but to claim petty glory. The Sith fed on one another. They were, as Bane would later say, victims of their own greed. The cracks became fissures during the Jedi-Sith War. The Brotherhood of Darkness had the strength to defeat the Jedi, but not the will to stand as one. Their leadership was fractured. The Jedi, united in purpose if, not always in strategy, exploited that weakness. And so the war came to a head on the Midrim, world of Ruzan, in 1032 BBY. It should have been just another chapter in a long campaign. Instead, it became the end of an era. The Sith, splintered by their own infighting, fell before the Jedi's coordinated onslaught. What might have been a hard-fought victory turned to disaster. Sith Lords perished by the dozensome to Jedi lightsabers, many more to betrayal by their own supposed comrades. And while others fell, Bane did something no one expected. He did not fight to the end. He did not die beside his brothers. He orchestrated their destruction. History does not record the details. Some truths are swallowed by ash, but what is known is this. When the dust cleared on Rusan, the Jedi believed the Sith were gone. All but one, from the ashes of destruction. I was the last survivor, Bane would later proclaim. But his survival was no accident of fate, no act of greater martial skill. It was insight. He had come to understand what no other Sith had, that their way of life was a road to extinction, the very foundation of their power, the pursuit of individual strength. The thirst for dominance made unity impossible. They were doomed to fall, again and again, because they could never stop tearing each other apart. And so, as the Jedi rejoiced, believing their ancient enemy vanquished, Darth Bane made a choice that would echo for 1,000 years. The Sith would survive, but not as they had been, not as an empire, not as an army of lords with competing ambitions and blades forever pointed inward. They would become something else, something smaller, something far more dangerous. Looking out over a galaxy that thought him extinct, Bane began crafting a new vision, not merely a plan for survival, but for absolute victory. The Jedi had won the battle. They believed they had won the war. But Bane knew otherwise. He understood something his fallen brethren never grasped. That power is not always about overwhelming strength or swift destruction. Sometimes power is in patience, in waiting, in watching your enemy grow fat with confidence, blind in their triumph. Sometimes victory is a slow, unseen blade. And now, as the last of the Sith, Bane had the chance to rebuild from ashes, to strip away what had failed and protect what had endured, to create something that would outlast the Jedi, the Republic, and every illusion of peace. And so, in the shadows of what the Jedi believed was their greatest triumph, Darth Bane began the true work of Sith vengeance. The galaxy entered what seemed like a golden age. Peace returned. The Jedi stood tall, but in the darkness something was stirring. A new Sith doctrine, a new Sith vision, a new Sith Order, and all of it would lead, step by step, toward the collapse of everything the Jedi had built. This is the story of how one man's vision changed galactic history. This is the story of Darth Bane. Amidst the broken remnants of the Brotherhood of Darkness, he made what may have been the most consequential decision in the history of the Sith. The old ways were dead. The age of Sith, legions of countless lords scrambling for dominance, was over. If the Sith were to endure, they needed a new path, a revolutionary path. What Bane created was deceptively simple, yet devastatingly effective. There should be only two Sith at any time, no more, no less, a master and an apprentice, one to embody power, the other to crave it. Pause and consider the weight of that. After millennia of Sith empires teeming with lords and acolytes, he reduced the order to two. It was not retreat. It was not surrender. It was the beginning of something more dangerous than any Sith empire had ever been. This doctrine, known as the Rule of Two, drew loose inspiration from an ancient, rarely understood force phenomenon called the Diader Unique, bond between two force wielders. But Bane did not seek connection. He did not seek balance. He sought survival, and more than that, he sought evolution. He had seen the truth. When the Sith gather in multitudes, the dark side twists them against one another. They squander their strength. They plot and betray, and in doing so, they rot from within. Bane did not deny this nature. He used it under his rule of two. Ambition became the core engine. The master would train the apprentice, share knowledge, pass down dark teachings, but always with the understanding that one day the apprentice would rise, would challenge, would kill. If they succeeded, they would become the new master. If they failed, they would die, and the master would seek another dot. In this ruthless cycle, only the strongest survived. Only the cunning endured, and with each passing generation, the Sith would sharpen, refine by fire, tempered by time. It was not merely survival, it was evolution. And yet, the Rule of Two was not only about ensuring Sith strength, It was about vengeance. It was about destroying the Jedi, not through battle, but through design. The old Sith had built armies, conquered worlds, challenged the Republic in open war, and every time they had lost. So Bane changed everything. No more armies, no more empires, no more open conflict. From now on, the Sith would move in shadows. They would manipulate, not charge. They would corrupt, not conquer, at least not at first. They would wait. This new path required something more than a strategy. It required a legacy, a plan that could not unfold in years or decades, but in centuries. This was the grand plan, its aim to infiltrate the Republic, erode it from within, to weaken the Jedi, slowly, quietly. And when the time was right, when both pillars of the old order were brittle and hollow, the Sith would strike, and they would not fail. Bane knew he would never see this triumph. It would take generations, dozens of master-apprentice pairs, each adding to the structure, adjusting the vision, building a future piece by piece. And it began with one, his apprentice, a girl named Darth Bane. She was the first to walk the path of the rule of two, the first to receive his teachings, not just in the dark side, but in patience, in vision, in purpose. He would mold her, and through her, the Sith would rise again, and, with cunning, he showed her. He taught her to hide her true nature from the Jedi, to cloak her presence in the shroud of silence and shadow. Bane prepared her not just to serve, but to surpass, to one day take his place and carry forward the lineage he had forged in fire. Their relationship was the very embodiment of the duality at the heart of the rule of two. As Master, Bane was both teacher and target. As apprentice, Zana was both student and eventual usurper. Each knew their role. Each accepted the inevitable. Confrontation. This tension wasn't a flaw in Bane's system, it was the very feature that made it powerful. It was what drove them both to grow stronger, deeper in the dark side's embrace. Meanwhile, the Jedi believed the Sith were gone. With Bane's apparent defeat, they stepped into what they thought was a new age, of perceptibly unaware that their ancient enemy had not been vanquished, only transformed as the Jedi rebuilt temples and trained new generations of knights to uphold a peace they had bought with blood. The Sith were already laying the foundation for its ruin. What made the rule of two so insidious was its design, its immunity to detection. To Sith, no matter how powerful, could disappear into the vast reaches of the galaxy in a way a Sith empire never could. They could move unseen, untouched, their presence hidden by distance and deception, and the dark side itself helped mask the myth's energies clouded the Jedi's sight, blinding them to the danger growing just beyond the veil. This was the beginning of the Sith's 1,000-year game of patience. With each transfer of power from master to apprentice, with every generation that furthered the grand plan, they drew one step closer to their revenge. The Jedi would not see them coming, not until it was far, far too late, and it all began with one man, one vision, one rule that would reshape the galaxy. All great stories have endings, even for those who reshaped the fate of stars. For Darth Bane, the architect of the modern Sith, his personal journey ended exactly as he had foreseen. Historical accounts tell us that Bane met his fate at the hands of his own apprentice, Darth Bane. Their final confrontation played out on the inner rim world of Ambria, though some sources whisper it may have happened on Moraband itself. But regardless of the setting, the outcome was the same. The apprentice challenged, the master and prevailed. The rule of two was not merely philosophy, it was prophecy. Bane had always known. His destiny was to be surpassed, to be struck down by the very student he had trained. And when that moment came, it was not a failure, it was fulfillment. The cycle he created had completed its first revolution. After his death, Bane's remains were taken to Moraband, the ancient world of the Sith, where the sands were blood-red and the valleys carved deep by the will of darkness. There, in the Valley of the Dark Lords, a final resting place was carved. A great sarcophagus was built, massive, solemn, inscribed with ancient Sith runes etched in the long-dead language of Kittat. It was no mere tomb. It was a declaration. The Valley of the Dark Lords already held the remains of the most powerful Sith in history, rulers of empires, wielders of darkness beyond imagining. By placing Bane among them, his successors affirmed that he stood as their equal. The inscriptions, written in Kitata tongue, older than memory, tied to the original Sith species, linked Bane to the ancient traditions of the Order, while also marking the beginning of something entirely new. But what made Bane's burial especially profound was this: he would be the last Sith Lord ever entombed on Moraband. After him, the Sith would vanish from history, operating in darkness, dying as quietly as they lived. No more tombs, no more monuments. This final honor underscored the pivotal role he played. He stood at the crossroads between what the Sith had been and what they would become. A towering statue was raised at the far end of his crypt. It depicted Bane clad in his ceremonial battle armor, an imposing figure locked in eternal silence. The armor was distinct, a mix of blue-gray and deep red, with gold etchings that shimmered like molten light. This armor, once worn in battle, had become a symbol of Bane's warrior soul, of the martial strength that let him survive when all other Sith perished. And yet, perhaps the most haunting part of his legacy was not stone or steel, it was fire. They say Bane's tomb is haunted by a spectral flame, an apparition of the Dark Lord himself. Was it truly his spirit, bound by the dark side? Was it simply a ghost formed from the concentrated energies in the Valley of the Dark Lords? Or just a legend, grown tall in the shadow of fear? It doesn't matter. The effect was the same, even in death. Darth Bane remained a presence to be reckoned with. That same fiery vision would return to galactic history thousands of years later. During the Clone Wars, Jedi Grandmaster Yoda journeyed to Moraband, seeking the secrets of immortality. There, deep in the darkness, he encountered the Phantom of Bane. The spectre tried to tempt him, offering the ancient seduction of the dark side. But Yoda, ancient and wise, saw through the illusion. He turned away, unshaken. Still, it proved something. Bane's legacy was no longer just history. It was myth. It was shadow. It was fire still burning. But his greatest legacy was not a statue, not a ghost. It was the lie that followed him into death. With Bane defeated and Zana vanished into the void, the Jedi reached their fateful conclusion. The Sith were extinct, and it made sense. Every Sith empire before had risen and fallen, like waves breaking against the shore. They assumed this was just another fall. Exactly what Bane wanted. For the next 1,000 years, the Jedi believed the Sith gone. They were reduced to history books, half-believed tales told to younglings as warnings. The Jedi dismantled their wartime defenses. They turned from warriors to peacekeepers, from generals to diplomats and scholars. The Republic, too, grew soft, comfortable in its perceived safety. But Bane's true legacy moved in silence. Zana took an apprentice of her own, She passed on more than dark knowledge. She passed on the vision, Bane's vision. Each generation continued the pattern, the apprentice rising, the master falling, one by one. Century by century, the rule of two ensured that the Sith survived, not in numbers, but in strength, growing more cunning, more dangerous, always waiting. The Jedi never saw them, even as the darkness coiled around their feet. The lineage of Bane would remain unbroken till it reached its final crescendo in two names, Darth Sid and Darth Vader. These final Sith Lords would succeed where empires had failed. They would nearly wipe out the Jedi. They would reshape the Republic into a Sith-ruled empire. This was the brilliance of Bane's vision. He understood what generations before him had not. That brute force and open war would never bring true victory. But deception, patience, the manipulation of systems over time, that could succeed. He gave up the dream of immediate conquest. He accepted that he would not live to see the final triumph. He built a system that would outlive him, designed to carry forward through blood and betrayal until the galaxy itself bent. Ironically, few in the galaxy would ever know Darth Bane's name. And yet, his shadow would shape their lives more deeply than almost any other figure in history. The fall of the Republic, the rise of the Empire, the destruction of the Jedi, all of it began with one man, one decision, one rule. Though his bones rested in the dust of Moraband, his true monument was the 1,000-year plan that brought the galaxy to its knees. The Jedi had believed they were witnessing the end of the Sith, but in truth, they were witnessing a new beginning, a transformation that would make their ancient enemy more dangerous than ever before. 1,000 years, that's how long the Sith waited. Patient, silent, watching. Most beings can't hold a single thought for a decade, but the Sith, they held their purpose across a millennium. After Bane's reformation, they moved like ghosts. Each master and apprentice added one thread to the tapestry of their revenge. This wasn't just patience. It was brilliance on a scale almost no one could comprehend. The Sith infiltrated the very institutions the Jedi had sworn to protect. The banking clans, the trade federations, the political circles, even the Republic Senate itself. Each position was another piece on a galactic board. Each piece moved with precision across centuries. The rule of two gave them flexibility. When a plan failed, a new master could adapt. When the galaxy shifted, so did the Sith. But the core remained unchanged. Survive, grow, strike. Dozens of Sith generations came and went, until, finally, it came to rest in one man, Sheev, Palpatine, to his apprentice, and to the few who dared glimpse beneath the mask, he was Darth Sidious. If Bane was the architect, Sidious was the builder who completed the vision. He was the greatest Sith Lord since Bane, the pinnacle of the rule of two, and he understood something even deeper than Bane had. That power doesn't need to be seized, it can be invited. Invaders are fought, but saviors are welcomed. The galaxy wouldn't be taken, it would be given away by those who thought they were saving themselves. The Clone Wars was Sidious' masterstroke. After decades of manipulating politics from the shadows, he engineered a conflict the Republic could not ignore, but could not win. As Chancellor Palpatine, he reluctantly accepted emergency powers. As Darth Sidious, he controlled both sides of the war. It was never just about victory, it was about erosion. The Jedi were stretched thin, forced into roles they were never meant to play. They became generals, not guardians. Commanders, not monks. Public support frayed. Their ideals were compromised. They became symbols of conflict, not peace, and all the while, Sidious prepared the final act. The clone army, the very soldiers the Jedi commanded, had been built with a hidden code. A directive so subtle it seemed like just another contingency. Order 66. Its true purpose. Devastating, singular, the elimination of the Jedi Order. And when the time came, when every piece was in place, Sidious gave the command. Across the galaxy, clone trooper soldiers who had fought beside Jedi for years suddenly turned. Not from hatred, not from betrayal, but because they were made to. They believed the Jedi were traitors. They followed the Order, and in a single moment, the light that had stood for 1,000 generations was consumed by the darkness that had waited just as long. They had sworn to protect the galaxy, but when the time came, they were alone. The timing was perfect, cold, precise. The Jedi, stretched thin across 1,000 battlefronts, found themselves isolated, spread too far to help one another, vulnerable in a way they hadn't been for centuries. Most never even saw the attack coming. Those who did, those who sensed something through the Force, had only moments to react. Not enough time, not enough strength. In one devastating, coordinated strike, the once mighty Jedi Order was reduced to nothing more than scattered survivors, hunted, haunted, alone among the stars. With the Jedi nearly destroyed, Sidious made his next move. He stood before the Senate, his face burned and disfigured. He clammed from a Jedi assassination attempt. With calm calculation, he painted the Jedi as traitors, conspirators who had tried to overthrow the Republic. And then, in that same breath, he declared a new era. The Republic was no more. In its place, he proclaimed the birth of the first galactic empire. And the Senate, gripped by fear and molded by long, slow manipulation, did not resist. They applauded, loud, thunderous. They surrendered the democracy they had cherished for 1,000 generations, willingly. This was it. This was the moment. The fulfillment of the vendetta Darth Bane had ignited a millennium before. The Jedi were broken. The Republic was dead. And a Sith Lord now ruled the galaxy. What countless Sith armies had failed to accomplish through war, Darth Sidious achieved. Through patience and deception, exactly as Bane had envisioned. But Sidious's victory wasn't just political or military. It was personal. It was poetic. Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi's great hope, the chosen one, the one destined to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force, was turned. Sidious had been working toward this moment for years, decades. From the beginning, he had cultivated a relationship with the boy. He presented himself as a mentor, a confidant, while the Jedi Council kept Anakin at a distance, suspicious of his power, wary of his potential. Sidious drew closer. He learned Anakin's fears, his deepest pain, especially the wound that never healed his mother's death. So when the visions began, visions of Padme dying in childbirth, Sidious offered what no Jedi could, a way to stop it, a way to cheat death. Anakin was desperate. He couldn't lose her, not again, not like that. And in that final moment, when Jedi Master Mace Windu moved to strike Sidious, Anakin made his choice. He intervened. He fell. Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, became Darth Vader, the Jedi's greatest light. Became the Sith's most terrible weapon. The rule of two was preserved. Even in victory, the cycle continued. Sidious, the master. Vader, the apprentice. It was the ultimate triumph of Bane's vision. Not only had the Sith destroyed their enemies and taken control of the galaxy, They had turned the Jedi's shining hope into their darkest enforcer. It was more than a victory of strength. It was a victory of belief, of ideology, a rejection of everything the Jedi had ever stood for. From that day forward, the Empire ruled with an iron fist. The Jedi were labeled traitors, their names dragged through official history. Their temples were repurposed or destroyed, and the Force itself began to fade into myth, nothing more than superstition, a whisper from another time. Children grew up not knowing the name of the Republic, only the Empire, only power, only fear. This was Bane's legacy, fully realized. His insight that the Sith had to evolve to survive had been proven correct, beyond even his most ambitious dreams. His rule of two had forged a chain of ever stronger Sith Lords, ending in Sidious and Vader. His strategy of patience, of secrecy, of shadows, had succeeded where entire armies had failed, and his vision of Sith rule had come to pass 1,000 years after his death. But in the Star Wars galaxy, death isn't always the end. Not for those strong in the Force. Most beings vanish into the cosmic energy field after they die. But some, just a few, find ways to remain. Their consciousness lingers. Their will endures. For Jedi, this might mean returning as Force ghosts. For Sith, it's harder, rarer, but their influence can still echo through time. No one understood this better than Jedi Grandmaster Yoda. In 19 BBY, as the Clone Wars neared their cataclysmic end, Yoda set out on a journey. He left the war behind. He wasn't seeking battle, he was seeking truth. His destination, Marabant, the ancient Sith homeworld, a place steeped in darkness, a place the Jedi had avoided for thousands of years. Yoda wasn't seeking confrontation. He was seeking understanding, secret of how to retain consciousness after death. A power that Jedi once thought impossible, but that belief was shattered when Yoda heard the voice of a long-dead Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn speaking to him from beyond. If this were possible, if a Jedi could preserve their identity even in death, it would reshape everything the Order knew about the Force, about life, about the afterlife. Yoda's quest led him into a series of trials tests, crafted not by chance, but by ancient beings known as the Force priestesses. They were mysterious guardians of the Force's deepest truths. They challenged Yoda. They made him face his fears, his pride, even his understanding of the Force itself. And then they led him to Moraband, to the place where the Sith's dark legacy still lingered, the red sands, the broken temples, the whispers of old power. Here, Yoda entered the Valley of the Dark Lords, where generations of Sith had been laid to rest. The dark side hung heavy in the air, thick, oppressive. For any lesser Jedi, it would have been overwhelming. But Yoda was ancient, strong, rooted in light. He endured, and he reached the tomb of Darth Bane. From the sarcophagus, a fiery vision emerged, the armored form of Bane spectral, towering, alive with rage and memory. It spoke, its voice echoed like thunder. I am the creator of the rule of two. The vision claimed its place in history. It boasted of its legacy, the passing of power from one to one across 1,000 years. But this wasn't truly Bane's spirit knot like Qui-Gon. This was a trial, a test, conjured by the Force priestesses, built from the dark energies still lingering in Bane's tomb, and from the myth of his fearsome legacy. But to Yoda, in that moment, it didn't matter. Real or not, this was a test of will. The spectre tempted him, pressed against his resolve, offered power in exchange for doubt. But Yoda stood firm. He was not fooled, not swayed. He saw the illusion for what it was, and spoke 3 simple words. An illusion, this is. And with that clarity, with that refusal, the spectre screamed and vanished, banished back into darkness. Yoda didn't win through strength. He won through wisdom. By seeing through the deception, he passed the trial and continued on the path toward the knowledge he sought. This brief encounter connected eras. From the Clone Wars to the ancient CH, it brought Bane's name into the light once more. For audiences watching the Clone Wars, it was the first glimpse of the figure who had changed everything, who had made Sidious's rise possible. Yoda's journey to Moraban wasn't forgotten. His experience was preserved, mapped out by the Iran artist Gamit Kond. His hand-drawn charts, along with illustrations of Bane's fiery form, were eventually collected in the Graph Archive on the Moon ORKUS-2. A rare, precious record of Jedi, of Sith, of legacy. But Bane's shadow didn't end there. Between 3 and 4 AB, as Luke Skywalker struggled with his identity, possibly the last Jedi, he journeyed to the planet Gazian. There, he encountered something extraordinary, a remnant of Jedi Master Elzar Mon, who had lived during the High Republic. This duplicate consciousness showed Luke a glimpse of the Republic in its golden age, 800 years after the Jedi had ended. The rule of Darth Bane. For Luke, who had received so little training, this reference to Bane was overwhelming. He realized how much he didn't know, and so he began recording everything he learned. He wrote the secrets of the Jedi, documenting the Order's history, including Bane and the Rule of Two, to preserve the truth, to help the Jedi prevent the Sith's return. But he wasn't the only one recording history. Sidious, before his final fall or so, wrote a tome, The Secrets of the Sith. In it, he paid tribute to Bane. He called him a great Sith Lord, the one who had survived the purge of the old Sith and ensured their rebirth. He credited Bane as the founder of the very lineage that led to his own reign. 2 books, 2 truths, opposite sides of the Force, and yet both pointed back to the same man, to Darth Bane. 1,000 years after his death, his name was still spoken, with reverence, with fear, with respect. Few beings in galactic history have left a shadow so long, an influence so deep through visions and voices, stories and scars. Darth Bane endured, even sealed in his sarcophagus on Moraband, even when his body was gone. His rule remained, his voice echoed, his legacy lived on, and to truly understand Darth Bane, we must look beyond what he did, and see why he did it. To truly understand Darth Bane, we must look beyond the things he did and peer into the mind that dreamed up the Rule of Two. What kind of man imagines a plan designed to unfold over centuries? What must burn inside someone to remake the Sith from the ground up? The answers reveal a being of staggering complexity and vision. At his core, Bane believed that strength must rule over weakness. This wasn't just a theory to him, it was a truth carved from pain, shaped by the raw experience of life and by his study of the ancient Sith texts. Unlike many dark-side followers who chased power like a thirst, Bane approached the Force almost like a scholar. He studied it. He analyzed what had worked, what had failed, what the ancient Sith had built and broken, and from that, he began forging something new. When Bane looked at the Brotherhood of Darkness, he didn't just see a Sith Order losing a war. He saw a sickness, the infighting, the treachery, the endless hunger for power at the cost of unity. was a rot. Sith weren't just killing each other. They were promoting the wrong kinds of Sith, not those with true strength, but those who could scheme, lie, or stab a rival in the dark. Power wasn't rising, it was clawing at itself. Bane saw this with chilling clarity, and he was honest with himself in a way few Sith ever were. He didn't lie about what the dark side was. He understood it better than most. The Sith were selfish. They were greedy. They were ruthless. But instead of seeing those traits as problems, he saw them as tools. Dangerous ones, yes, but tools nonetheless. The system, not the nature, needed to change. The mind that conceived the rule of two was capable of thinking beyond itself, while most beings, even Force wielders, are bound to their lifetime what they can do before they Bane thought past his own death. He accepted that the revenge he craved wouldn't be his to see. The Jedi would fall, yes, but only long after. His body had crumbled into ash. He didn't need to be the one holding the blade. He only needed to build the hand that would. Bane inspired fear, but not in the usual way. He didn't need to scream or burn cities to make people tremble. What terrified others was the certainty in his voice, the precision in his vision, the lengths he would go, too cold, calculated, relentless. His power didn't just come from what he could do, it came from what he was willing to do. He had been forged in the fires of the Brotherhood of Darkness, trained in warfare and hardened by the crucible of betrayal. He knew the battlefield, not just through the Force, but through strategy. And he applied that understanding not just to war, but to the future of the Sith itself. In combat, Bane was a force of nature. Agile, strong, fearsome. His lightsaber style was precise and brutal. He used fear as a weapon clouding the minds of his enemies before his blade even touched them. Few survived to speak of him. Those who did described something overwhelming. Not just a warrior, but a presence. But it wasn't just his body or his blade that made Bane dangerous. His mind was just as deadly. His command over the dark side, his insight into its currents, gave him power others couldn't match. And yet, for all this, he lacked one thing: diplomacy. Bane didn't negotiate. He didn't compromise. He didn't look for middle ground. He pushed through. He overcame. Always his armor reflected this. Blue, gray, and red, etched in gold. It covered him almost entirely, designed, not just to protect, but to intimidate. A symbol, a warning, a memory of ancient Sith tradition reimagined in one man. His lightsaber burned crimson, like most Sith, but he also carried a rare blade, a lightsaber pike with a fire-colored beam. It was proof of his adaptability. He was ready for every kind of battle. His ship, the Wakan, was a T-class personal cruiser built for speed, reach, and control. It wasn't just a ship, it was a mobile fortress, and it outlived him. Later, Sith would use it too, treating it as something sacred, a relic of their rebirth. Still, none of this, not his armor, not his ship, not his weapons, were as dangerous as his mind. That was Bane's greatest power. The vision he crafted, the clarity of purpose, the way he saw centuries ahead and built for a future he'd never live to see. He wasn't just powerful, he was focused, patient, unshakable. And yet, even the most brilliant vision can carry the seeds of its own downfall. Because what Bane may never have foreseen is how short the Sith's final reign would be. The end product of Bane's long lineage reigned for barely a generation. It ended at the Battle of Endor, in Forabai there. The one who was supposed to be his heir, Darth Vader. The flame of Bane's legacy made a choice that shattered everything. He chose love. He chose sacrifice. He chose his son, Anakin Skywalker. The chosen one turned against his master. He killed Darth Sidious, and in doing so, he killed himself. The Sith died with him. Not through battle, not through war, but through compassion. The very trait the Sith called weakness was what ended them. An ancient prophecy had said the chosen one would bring balance to the Force, and in that moment, maybe Anakin did. The rule of two was broken. The chain snapped. The darkness ended where it had begun, but the galaxy is never that simple. Unseen by all, Sidious had prepared for this. He found a way to cheat death, though how exactly remains a mystery. His mind was reborn in a clone body. In secret, he created a puppet Supreme Leader Snoke to lead a new movement, the First Order, from the shadows. Sidious manipulated the galaxy again. The Sith, it seemed, weren't done after all. The First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire, and Kylo Ren Vader's own blood took up the dark legacy. He never wore the name of Sith, but the spirit of the rule of two haunted him nonetheless. Then came the end, in 35 AB. A final confrontation tore through the Force. Sidious stood against Rhea, young woman of unexpected heritage. His granddaughter, in her burned the fire of the Jedi, the courage of those who had come before, drawing strength from their legacy. Rey struck down Sidious at last. That was the true end. The Sith great vendetta of Darth Bane were gone. Not hidden, not waiting, gone, and so, the story of Darth Bane, the architect of modern darknesses, not just one of vision and power, it's one of influence. From the Clone Wars to the rise and fall of the Empire, to the final death of the Sith, his shadow stretches over all of it. His vision succeeded and failed. He created a path that kept the Sith alive for 1,000 years, but by placing everything in the hands of two just to he, ensured that all could end with the death of those two. That is the lesson of Darth Bane. That power without balance destroys itself. That even the most disciplined dark side path is still the dark side, and that every fire, no matter how carefully lit, eventually burns out, and yet Bane endures, his name whispered in Sith records, his tomb sealed on Moraban, his ghostly image haunting Jedi Masters and Sith apprentices alike. Through legacy, through fear, through history itself, Darth Bane became immortal, not by conquering death, but by changing the galaxy forever.